Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, brought to you by Accuracy in Academia. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Good morning, everybody.
All right, I think we're now in spring. We have a little bit of a dip here.
Yeah, it looks pretty spring today, though. It's spring. It's like it goes up and down, and
but
sometimes tolerable, sometimes not.
I mean, you've lived here a number of years, and I grew up here, but I am trying to remember, and I don't pay so close attention when I'm tracking weather. I'm not a meteorologist or anything like that. But I don't recall a time where you've had a 90-degree day followed by a few days later for when it dips into the 30s. I mean, you basically had about a 60-degree drop in the span of a couple of days. That's a large drop, and I think it probably caught some people off guard. I know that when I looked at the weather forecast on my app, I'm like, oh, come on. And I go out to the car and there's some frost on the windshield. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
It was in the 20s, like 27 at Dulles, so well below freezing.
Oh,
and
man,
like you say, just a few, the earliest 90-degree day here in like 23 years or something. So, yeah, it's kind of weird. It's like about the time back when we were having really bad winters, we were having early 90 degrees. So,
yeah.
It's like a pattern. But yeah, it was a pretty wide swing. And I'm sure a lot of people lost some plants they'd gardened,
Yeah,
because the weather people came out like a week before that, and they said, we really think, our considered opinion is this is the last freeze of the year. No more extreme cold. And so I bet a lot of people rushed out and put their plants in the ground, and one night, and you cover them well, you might make it through. But you don't totally make it through. You lose some of your plants, right? So
yeah. Well, I mean, part of it is that if you cover your plants, you stand the chance of saving some.
Yeah.
But if you leave them uncovered like that, and you get a kind of that flash freeze, you probably will lose something. Something will probably die on it, and then it's not going to be quite the plant you had there. So maybe what it is that is April the normal planting time, or do people like to wait till May just to be safe?
Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's they all came out and said you don't have to worry about this anymore. So
yeah.
But yeah, usually it's a little bit later around here.
Yeah, well, thanks once again. Mother Nature does Mother Nature. Meteorologists and other weather forecasters will get yet another black eye. That's a tough business to be in. When you're
really
right,
is.
When you're right, you look great. When you're wrong, it's people just throw everything at you. So
right, and the weather gets a vote. A big vote, and you really can't predict what that vote's going to be.
Yeah. So anyway, it's I'm glad that we're getting out there and doing things and stuff like that. All right. Well, there's still some news out there. Oh yeah, I want to say. So this is episode number 360, but this is also National Talk Like Shakespeare Day. I don't know. Can you talk like Shakespeare?
Better. I saw that on there. I was like, I better not try that.
Well, what will thou do today?
Yeah. When I was in high school, we had a teacher who was a Shakespearean scholar, and he was also assistant football coach. He was a very good defensive line coach, I believe. But he was also a great. He put on these Shakespearean plays, right? And so, like you went all boys school, boys had to play all the parts. So, and they were so good that like the papers would come out and review our little high school plays and stuff. And so, every Jesuit high school boy has been exposed to some Shakespeare. So, we all read it and had to memorize stuff and all that stuff. Also today is Bob's birthday. Happy birthday to Bob. So
okay, so if Bob caught up with us today, since we kind of messed up the schedule in more ways.
I hope he did in season. So
So it's I will try not to speaketh too much in Shakespearean tones today. But so I put this up here mainly because as a child, my father was big on pounding Shakespeare into my head and other things like Barbara Fritchie and stuff like that. So he developed his own version of concentration, in essence. Basically, he had a whole bunch of he typed out a whole bunch of Shakespeare quotes, kind of half and half, and then you put them on cards and you flip them over, and then we would play each other, and that's how I learned various Shakespeare quotes. Now, remember, that was when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10 years old, maybe, or whatever. Apparently, I guess I impressed some people by my ability to do that, but that is totally gone. Right?
To remember or not to remember.
Yeah. Look, to me, this is like eating spinach. I ate so much spinach when I was a kid. It's like, no, I'm not going back there.
I hear you.
Only in small doses.
Doing the chicken pot pies.
Yeah.
This thing, like my kids like them. Well, when do we ever have that? I'm like, because I've had enough. You're free to get them wherever they're offered in a restaurant.
Yeah, you're getting independent. You go get your own chicken pot pie.
That's right.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, I will watch sometimes some things that are based on Shakespeare here and there, but my and we visited when we visited England. In 2015, we visited Shakespeare's home in Avon and stuff like that. So it has something. I mean, plus Shakespeare is just extremely famous anyway.
Right.
So you do that.
As a writer, you have to look up to him.
But overall, I'm not going to be sitting around with Romeo and Juliet and Othello and all these other things. But yeah, what a fabulous writer. But I don't know. I saw this. I thought, oh, great. I mean, how many? I get. There probably are people that are running around today going to be talking like Shakespeare. Okay. Yeah. So anyway, all right, on to the real news. So President Trump, went from this temporary ceasefire that was going to expire the other night to an indefinite ceasefire as they continue negotiations. The reaction has been kind of interesting. We're not, it's not clear really where we're going with this. I mean, there's still some issues in the Strait of Hormuz. Both sides apparently are, they're arguing or debating over some points and things like that. But I think the major hostilities are a little more muted, though. There's a little bit of activity going on. Nevertheless, I don't know how long the indefinite is in Trump's mind before he comes out again and decides that, okay, I've given you a very long leash and you haven't really done anything. So, we're going back to doing what we were doing before. I mean, what do you think is going on here?
Well, a couple of things. One is, so the ceasefire that expired yesterday, they came out of their hidey holes. So now we know where they are, and we're back to track. And we lost track of some people for a little bit, and now we're tracking them again. So that was part of the purpose of that ceasefire, was to see where they are. So I believe Trump's plan is, if he doesn't get what he wants, then, we'll decapitate another layer of leadership and we'll deal with the next guy. So, and I think they all know that now. I think everybody's pretty straight on Trump's ability to find them and kill them if he decides to do that. So that's, they're literally negotiating with a gun to their head. He's trying very hard not to destroy the infrastructure of the country and the infrastructure of the oil business, that Iran has. The problem is like, so once you get oil wells pumping, then it's very expensive and not easy to stop. It's better to just keep them pumping, right? So right now, Iran is in a situation where it cannot sell any oil abroad. So whatever oil it gets, it has to store, and it is running out of storage space. And that's part of the problem with Karg Island, is for the Iranians, is that's where they store oil. So now they're scrambling for storage facilities, or they're going to have to think about capping those wells, which they don't really want to do. So that's also like, that's a time element working against the leadership there. So they got to work that out one way or another. I also think that he's really done a good job of like managing this, where it's like, there's not really a lot, like you say, the reaction's kind of strange because Democrats have not really found their voice on this, right? The country is not against fighting you're on, right? The polling results are such that, you really can't say there's a big, bunch of momentum for him to pull out and go home and all this stuff. There's people on both sides trying for that, but they haven't really found a voice. And so now he's got a thing where he's not blowing up the country. He's not destroying anything. It's like Scott McKay said, it's like when you have a fight and then one guy gets the other guy in a chokehold and he's just waiting on the guy to quit breathing, basically. And that's what's going on here. We got the chokehold and we're just, sitting here doing noogies until, they give up.
Noogies.
I don't 60 episodes. I think it's time we mention noogies. Anyway.
As old as we are, it's like I don't get to hear the word noogie all that often. Okay,
that happens much anymore. Thank goodness. That was painful.
Yeah, if you don't know what a noogie is, I'm sure Google's got its own explanation for it. So I'm sure there are plenty of videos on people doing that too somewhere along the line. There's a video for like everything.
That's right. That's right.
It's kind of crazy. Yeah, I mean the other thing about it too, because I follow the financial markets a lot, I'm and watching the gyrations and everything like that, and so we had April 1 of last year was Liberation Day, and markets tanked for weeks and weeks, and then came roaring back once they saw what was going on and things. The economy didn't completely tank on that, and markets do this. Markets are going to go up and down, and they look forward. They're always looking 6 to 12 months.
They look very near term, right? And they're very what do you call it?
They're worried about the short term, but they're also really worried about the long term. That's more their cause for concern is, what is it going to look like 6 months from now? What are your earnings going to be, and all this, and what the job situation is going to be? What is inflation going to be? Things that concern the market. So, we just went through another one of these periods, almost the same period of time, but except this time it was more, I guess, kind of what, because of the war, basically, since the end of February, we went through a lot of March of just like a lot of ups and downs. And then as we've been getting into April, the market has come back and has been now setting new records. As a result, when now it looks like market makers, observers are saying, as long as things remain kind of in this sense of where, we're not bombing the heck out of Iran, and they're not taking a lot of aggressive action, we can live for the time being with $95 to $100 oil for now. All the other things being equal, as long as there's still jobs, if inflation can be controlled, and obviously higher gas prices factor into that. It takes money out of people's pocketbooks, and they think about that, and that's a net negative for the economy there. But this economy, despite the fact that it's not roaring along per se, it continues to move forward and defy the market. And now we're hearing in terms of like, I guess, are we in a war economy? And it just seems to be like that. I mean, we're getting some daily ups and downs, but the general momentum has been mostly
positive. Yeah.
And everything
is up, pay up, employment up, inflation holding steady, relatively low rate. I mean, we gripe about 2.5, right? But it was 9 under Biden. So that's a whole different world in terms of inflation.
Yeah, I really, there's no way either you or I could really predict which way jobs or inflation are going to go, because so many factors that go into that, and one thing can just set that off. And there's no doubt that there are certain underlying inflation, like I have said before, that is not going to go away. There is a floor somewhere, and it's probably somewhere in that 2 to 2.5, maybe even close to 3% range, where we're just going to have a hard time getting that down until we can get more handle on something. So it seems like once the eggs, when eggs and we're going crazy, people were complaining about that. Eggs have stabilized, But now beef prices are out of control, and so now we're waiting for beef prices and the supply and everything like that to kind of get back into equilibrium. My wife she made a pot roast last week, and invited people over, and we just talk about how it was not that long ago that you could buy the chuck roast, the formation, the meat for that at, I think it was like $5.99 a pound or whatever. It was now up to like $7.99 or $8.99 a pound. So the jump was substantial in a very short period of time. We assume that it will eventually go back down to a more reasonable level. But when that happens, there's people all of a sudden who like meat are going to cut back on that until it gets more affordable again. And so we're just, I definitely still in my mind, it's like, if I buy this today, I'm probably buying it at a better price than I will be in a few months from now. But I never know. Sometimes things reverse on you, and you're like, oh wow, it just got a lot cheaper. That's great. So we're just kind of treading along here a little bit like that. But overall, I'll take 2.5% to 3% for now, because it's better than the Biden inflation we had, and we just have to continue to work on that. And hopefully we can get that down even further. I think we do have to kind of get past the war. We need some things on the horizon. We need to settle some issues so we can get something that can stabilize the economy overall. One more, like I said, one more pronouncement by Trump, and I guess we'll probably tank the market for a while. But sometimes those are just buying opportunities. The market goes on sale, and you go and you buy in. And AI's effect on the job is still kind of.
They think it's such short term in the market that he says something. Oh, you got a bunch of bargain basement sales. 2 days later, they're completely overreacting to something else, right? So. It's the stock market itself is a study in overreaction every day. They overreact to something every day.
Well, and the thing too, I think what we're seeing here though is that I don't know that there has been a market that has reacted as much to what a president does as this market. President Trump has got this enormous.
He does stuff. I mean, Biden worked for 3 hours the last 8 months he was president. And markets are not roiled, Well, you can bake that one in.
Well, what I think is a part of the factor here is that we're supposed to have all these checks and balances. We've got the House, which passes spending bills, and the Senate, which is supposed to go ahead and do their version, and they go through and it gets to the president's desk and all this stuff, and so that the president doesn't just run roughshod over everything, but by and large, what the president says, he really has kind of a bully pulpit. He has been able to shape things in the way that no other president in my lifetime that I can remember has been able to do so. So now I think he has a real outsized influence in the market. I mean, he pounds away at the Federal Reserve. He continues to do this. He has lots of things to say on lots of different pieces of legislation, and it does influence, I think, a lot of the ways that Congress votes and the Senate votes, and so therefore you get a very Trump agenda in there, unlike other presidents can talk about things, but they usually haven't held the same amount of power. I mean, Congress has usually held the really levers, in doing that. And it's like, Mr. President, we respect you, but this is what we're putting on your desk, and you either sign it or you don't sign it. That type of thing.
I mean, you think about like the era of Clinton, who was the most important people in Washington during that time? Clinton and Newt Gingrich, right? The Speaker of the House, member of another party. You think of the time LBJ, the congressional leadership, during LBJ's time in the Senate was more, you hear a lot more about what LBJ did in that time period of time than you do about the president, who was Eisenhower, right? Eisenhower, very quiet presidency. Congress dominated policymaking in Washington, and the president took a more reserved role. Well, you're kind of at the opposite of that now, where Congress has been thoroughly marginalized. It's looked at as a road, what do you call those things in the road? The bumps, speed bump to be gotten around, to be driven around the corner and keep going. right? Because it's not, that's essentially all it is. So like we turn to you for the things that like we can't do any other way. But there's nothing burbling out of Congress to change America positively or negatively, really in any way, right? They do what the administration, their job is to do what carry out the administration's will. And the Constitution is set up so that that tension would always exist, and that power would fluctuate. When you had a strong president, you would have a strong presidency, and when you had presidents that weren't as strong, then Congress would play a more prominent role. So right now you have one where the president is overarching, as powerful as any president in generations, right? Like maybe back to FDR. Like it really had the command of the American political system in a way that nobody since FDR has had, and maybe before him. So, when I see these people say, we should have elected Kamala Harris. No, we should not have elected Kamala Harris. There's just no, we shouldn't have, because then, the people who that they think are completely ineffectual, right, would be running the country, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's a good point. I mean, what we see here is that where in the past, often in the past, the Speaker of the House and the Senate Majority Leader, they were kind of kingmakers. I mean, they led the way. I mean, look at all the years that Tip O'Neill ruled the roost, and
right.
And you mentioned Gingrich. That's a great example of Gingrich and Clinton, and you had that. And being Speaker of the House was something that you really would try to attain. You wanted
now
that.
They kind of foisted it on this guy who has it now.
Yeah, you wanted that job.
You take it.
I know the Republicans have been like, okay, we control Congress, but who wants this?
That's right.
And even Senate Majority Leader. I mean, there's jousting to a certain extent, but they know that comes with a lot of qualifications.
Right.
So you don't. It's not like it has been in general throughout history. I mean, there are periods, but these guys do not hold the sway and the power that they have in past presidencies. Right. And so it's like, okay, so John Thune says this, or Mike Johnson says this. That's fine. We're going to listen to him, but it's really, what does Donald Trump say?
That's right. And that Mike Johnson is going to get around to doing Donald Trump's bidding,
right?
One way or the other. Whatever Trump wants him to do, he's going to do. And to me, that's fine, because I'm for what they're trying to do. Thune is like, he's trying to manage cats, march cats around basically. And he doesn't have the power. His things that he wants to do, if he has an initiative and Trump doesn't agree to it, then that initiative fades. Like, it doesn't happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of times senators can be a lot more obstinate on things. So
yeah, that's right. They won a statewide election. It's kind of hard to tell them, not to do stuff.
Right. Yeah. They do think of themselves as kind of this cut above, and so they will act that way. And so if you're a Senate Majority Leader, that's still a tough job, because you've got to keep that together. Republicans have a harder time than I think Democrats. Democrats are kind of just a bunch of like lapdogs, and
right.
We will follow you. We're robots. We will, whatever you say, we'll do. We'll vote. Yes. Okay. Fine.
Yeah. They don't care about being irresponsible.
No, that's they don't. They have no morals or anything like that anyway. They just do
right.
whatever they're told.
That's right.
So yeah. All right. That's one thing. All right. This one I thought was interesting, and you probably find this interesting too. I mean, right? Department of Justice has gone after the Southern Poverty Law Center. No friends of ours, right? I mean, this group. I was listening to. So I normally listen in the morning when I'm driving, from the gym back home, to a ABC podcast called Start Here, and it's just kind of a wrap up of some of the news. And they reported on this, the Justice Department going after the SPLC, and talked about things that they did back in the days of, fighting the Klan and some of these racist, organizations and stuff like that. Now, there was no mention of the SPLC going after conservative, right-wing groups and labeling groups, as hate groups when they were the farthest thing from the truth. They just, they were going after everything that they could with very scant evidence. And now that looks like
wasn't AIM listed as a hate
oh,
group?
I know AIM was in there, and I think Cliff Kincaid was one of those people that also got named in there and everything like that. And you know, so they're still revered by the media for this. Oh, they have done such good work over the years. You know, so what if they paid these guys, what is it, $3 million or something like that? Paid all this money to these informants, you know, to inform them. But you know, at the same point in time, they are funding these. They are paying the informants to basically be a part of the organizations that they're claiming are hate groups. And I don't know. I mean, I'm looking at this, hoping that they're really going to get hoisted by their own petard on this, because they don't deserve all the accolades that they get. I mean, they have been a terrible organization for many, many years.
So, yeah. First of all, I want to say, when it started out, they were doing a good thing in a very difficult climate, right? They were trying to root out institutional, government-endorsed racism, and a lot of it was in the South. Some of it was elsewhere, but that's, you know, they're in Montgomery. I believe they're based in Montgomery, Alabama. So, you know, which is a good place to base if you know, to do that kind of work. And for a long time, they did good work that helped the South. But at some point, they got, you know, complimented, what do you call it, fawned over by Democrat leaders, and their mission drifted to, you know, help us expose the right as being racist, right? It looks like a powerful tool to call somebody a racist, so let's use it against them. Okay, so they became a tool of trying to deliver this message. You know, during the George W. Bush administration, he told the FBI to go find all the hate groups, all the conservative hate groups in America. He wanted a full report on who every single one of them was, how many members they had, and all this stuff. They came up with a report that said in the entire United States, there were 7,700 people involved in conservative, right-wing, racist hate groups. 7,700 people out of 330 million. Okay. So now, you know, the way they counted, and it was done by the Bush administration, you could say, it's probably a little low. Maybe it's double that. Maybe it's 15,000 people, right? 15,000 committed white supremacist, right-wing racist in all of America. Okay. So, then you can't carry the story with 15,000 cranks, right? Three idiots, right? You can't. People are going to say, okay, they're idiots. We all, we got some idiots on our side too. Okay, to make this into a movement, right? They had to concoct these groups, right? Like guys rode off a bus at a Glenn Youngkin rally in Richmond, right? They're all dressed perfectly in the same stuff. They're all fit, young, white guys. Their faces are half covered with sunshade, so you can't see who they are. So they don't lose any reputation over it. All they do is say, I'm a white guy marching in this thing for racial hatred, right? And so you're like, gosh, how can Glenn Youngkin be associated with that? Well, he wasn't. So, I've always thought, okay, that's a political dirty trick. Don't know who pulled it, right? But somebody sent those guys there, right? And they try to trace the vans and all this kind of stuff, but these guys have been doing this in a lot of ways for a long time. So now they're caught. And I think that you're about to hear that they've been connected to a lot more of this kind of nonsense than we ever could have imagined. Okay. But the big thing about this story is there are two things. One is, part of me says, okay, you none of these guys are named Brennan or Clapper or Comey. The things you're supposed to be working on, you're still finding an excuse to go work on something else. Yeah, this is a big thing. Good for you, but you're still not meeting the moment. Okay. Secondly, though, the SPLC has about $800 million in a bank account that is set up to be given to Democrats to help their campaigns in the midterms. Now, you and me both know from the nonprofit world that is not at all legal. Okay. But now that they're under investigation, the Justice Department can freeze that money. So that's $800 million that won't go into Democrat coffers for this cycle. So you take that, you take the fact that, Kamala left the DNC completely broke, in fact, in debt. And you take in the fact that Act Blue is also crashing on legal shores at this moment, right? It's going to be hard to see how the Democrats finance their midterm elections.
So is I'm looking this up, is the SPLC, I mean, they're probably, they're a 501c3, like Media Research Center, like AIM, like so many organizations we know, Heritage and whatnot.
Yeah.
So they can receive tax deductible contributions. What you're saying here with this $800 million, though, is that, the Justice Department, if they really investigate that, they could in essence put the SPLC out of business for violating, Internal Revenue Service law. You cannot do that kind of activity. If they can prove that beyond a shadow of a doubt, they can revoke that tax exempt status.
C3,
and that would effectively put them out of business. They would just. But see, it's what you talk about. They start off. This is part of the problem too. Is that we know of organizations or foundations or whatever that start off with a very good intent and actually did good work in its beginning, and then somewhere along the way kind of got co-opted and the whole 9 yards, and then turned when they just got, they found that there was a very profitable path as such to doing something else. And for the SPLC, the cover was, we're fighting against racism in America and all this, and also we look at our history. In the meantime, they're going up there to try to dig up dirt on all these conservative organizations and make stuff up.
Not dig up, create.
Well, you're right. I'm just saying. That's what my next thing was. They make it up to make their case, right? It's like, because I can't remember. I don't have any specific. I remember looking. I think the first time I saw this from AIM, and I think I looked at some of the stuff they put out, and I was like, "You've got to be kidding me," And so if you're on the inside and you're running the organization, and then they come and they label you like that, and then you go through and you see what they've said, and you're like, and that's not true because you've lived it, you worked there. that was my life for 40 years. And that is just ridiculous to have them do that, and they get away with it. And it's not just one organization, it's multiple organizations that have been tarred with this brush. And I'm sure their conservative organizations are probably like, oh, finally, we've been complaining about these guys for decades, and we're finally getting some traction on this. So, once again, here's my yet again some of my faint praise for Trump administration of sorts is that they're doing something that has been long overdue and needed. I don't think anybody no one else has had the guts in this 4 years of his administration. By the time he gets out of here, we'll have seen monumental shifts in a lot of things, including stuff like this. We've already seen it, how he's defunded a bunch of stuff that doesn't need to be funded. Now he's looking at this. If they KO the SPLC, that'll be very devastating to the liberals and the left, because they thought they had one. This was a nice cushy thing they had there, a nice little funnel. So
if you are in the business of providing radicals for when radicals are needed to make the other side look bad, God only knows what all you're connected to. They're now going to look at, were Jan 6 people, were those people paid for by SPLC?
Yeah,
it's going to go a long way. They're not to the end of it yet. Not even.
Yeah. Close. Well, I don't know if they put out anything yet because I haven't followed it as closely as I should have. But if they actually start listing, where this money has gone and how they've been funding it, it should be very eye-opening. The SPLC is saying that's what they have to do that in order to get in there and expose these organizations. It's like, you don't have to do it that way.
Well, all right, and it's like you're not exposing them either. You're giving them money. Exposing and giving them money are not the same.
So anyway, we'll kind of keep an eye on the SPLC and see how this whole thing develops. More personnel changes within the administration. So it looks like we've hit a point now where, the administration, President Trump and others, are looking at the personnel and they're saying, maybe it's time we make some shifts and we kind of gird up here for the next round or whatever. So the labor secretary, not a favorite of conservatives in general.
Right.
She's out. So here's what is it, Lori Chavez-DeRemer. So she's out now. That's probably a good sign. I don't know who's in the mix for replacing her. When it comes time. I mean, I guess they put in the undersecretary, the acting secretary. They've got somebody taking care of that for now.
Yeah, I used to coach this kid. His dad has been he's been Secretary of Labor like 5 times because he served these little interim spots. He doesn't have to be confirmed, so no one ever knows who he is. But
see, that's the other thing too. Didn't we have this under the first Trump administration? No, we had lots of acting people after he was firing people. We just had people acting forever. It's almost seemed. It's like they just got, they didn't have to be confirmed. So he just, he put these people in there and they just kind of did that. I don't know. Is there a term limit on that?
Yeah, it's 285 days or something like that.
Well, that's a fair. I mean, you can
a fair amount of times, most of a year.
Yeah, that's a fair amount of time while you
I think he'll use every bit of it before he does anything about Attorney General.
Yeah.
I believe he's going to keep Blanche in there as long as he can, and he may nominate Blanche when he's forced to and go through the confirmation battle. The labor secretary. So you pick these things. You pick these high-powered people, and some of them well, some of them you don't. And this is one he did not know her well. And she, this is sort of like the mistakes Trump made in the first term where he took recommendations of others. This lady, she's in office, she's drinking on the job. Her husband's sexually harassing the staff. They were just a hot mess. They weren't doing the work. He wants some stuff done with the Department.
He's working in the Labor Department, right?
Yeah.
And then he's being accused of harassing. It's like, these are the things that the Labor Department is supposed to be preventing and investigating.
That's right. So, I mean, that was a bad fit. As you say, the conservatives were never on line with her anyway. So, it's probably a good thing that she got sent in.
Yeah. So, and then we have the other one, which was just occurred, which was the Secretary of the Navy, Pete Hegseth, torpedoed him as such, just sent him away. So he is actually, I guess, kind of a neighbor of Trump in Florida. He's got he's apparently got this big mansion, right around Mar-a-Lago too. And I saw one report that said, part of that was that, he kind of, as a result, he kind of had a direct line to Trump. He didn't necessarily go through Hegseth all the time.
I think that there's the story out there that, the liberal story is that, any of these guys who ever try to talk to Trump directly, he gets mad, he gets jealous or whatever. But I believe that is what they call leftist spin, right? I think he got fired for the same reason that the other guy got fired, because they're not in line with the mission.
Right. And I think the other thing too is that even if that was true, even if he was going directly to Trump, the thing is that he's working in the Defense Department or the Department of War. Pete Hegseth is his immediate superior, right? So he should be talking to Pete Hegseth first, and then they can talk, and then they know. And so there's a chain of command, and I think you should be following it nevertheless.
If any of that's true. If any of
that is true.
Because they say that's complete nonsense, right?
But I mean, he's a financier. I mean, he's not like, I guess he wasn't career military or anything like that. So he's been in there for about a year. So did I hear correctly that Hung Kao is going to take over for now?
Yeah, that's right. So
I thought, oh wow, this is maybe that'll give him a chance to in the future to run again, to add to his resume and say, I want to go.
Here's the thing about it: guys like Hung Kao, Nick Freitas are about to become really valuable, because I was reading through the thing this morning about, I guess we're going to get to at some point, the Virginia redistricting, right? A lot of those districts became less favorable to Democrats than they were before, right? And it covers more of the state. They made the map and all, but a lot of them went from like Kamala plus 49 to Kamala plus 12, right? So, I mean, now, 12 can be won by a good, solid politician. The thing about Virginia is it's not the way it's set up. It's just not terribly partisan. And so right now it's about 50.8% Democrat and 49.2% Republican. And that's enough to win every single election, right? And you're finding out the difference between democracy and republic right now in the Commonwealth of Virginia, right? They have one more vote than we do, so they shove everything down their throat they can. Now, as for that, the other consequences of that is, I believe Florida will be this time next week. We'll have added 6 to the Republican column that will stay in the Republican column. So, the effort will be counteracted with that. And the other thing is, I believe Jonathan Turley said that we can expect sometime this week to hear about Calais versus Louisiana, which is the case that pertains to minority set-aside congressional districts drawn to ensure a Black person wins them. And there's a court challenge to that, and it's expected to fall. It's expected to fail. So, there won't be set-aside districts anymore, which will set out a rush for redistricting in a variety of states, across the South that will make them all more Republican, including Louisiana, which has, 3 Democrat congressmen now, and Alabama, which has 2, 3 maybe, and Georgia could make a big difference in Georgia. So, you can redraw, DeKalb County in with, the northwest part of the state, and they'll never win. So, it backfired on them. That's gonna, the Democrats gonna pay a price for what they did in Virginia.
Yeah. So, okay, since you went there, we'll stay there for a minute or two here. So they passed this. There's a judge in, is it pronounced
Tazewell County?
Tazewell. All right. So he's blocked it. Probably will go to the Virginia Supreme Court, which may or may not, reverse that and say it's fine. And they got on with it. Now, I think I'm on record of, I oppose all of this, mid-decade redistricting to begin with. This has been very chaotic, and it's been tit for tat. Starts with Texas at the urging of Trump, and then California.
Well, it started with California, right?
No, I started with Texas. Texas did theirs, and they lit a fire on everybody else. And then the liberals started to think, well, we have to offset the 5 that Texas thinks we're going to get, and then just has lit a fire. Maryland's trying to do it, and Virginia's going this way. Virginia's been the interesting case too, because with Virginia you have a commission, right? And so they basically, it wasn't. I mean, this thing that they were voting on was to suspend. What that redistricting
commission decided, right? Before Virginia
until 2030, when the next census occurs, and then then the Democrats can go ahead and redraw this and make this a 10-1.
Right. So the history of this in Virginia is, in Virginia, the congressional delegation used to sit down and make the map, and that sounds crooked and backroom, but it was pretty good at matching up voters with their intentions, right? For instance, I live here in Reston. Reston was part of the 10th district, which was it used to be, it was Frank Wolf's seat for a long time. So light Republican, not hardcore MAGA, but Republican, right? But Reston is 70-30 Democrat. So Reston was sort of disenfranchised. So now they put Reston in the 8th and the 11th. I mean, which was Tom Davis' old seat. But, the reason Tom Davis got out of Congress is because he realized that his old seat was about to become a Democrat plus 10, 12, 15 seat, which it is now. I think it's D12 now. So, so he got out. Jerry Connolly took it over. Now Jerry Connolly's, whipping boy has it. Walkinshaw is his name. So, that they sort of expanded the will of the voters right there. Then they created the commission. That was decided, this is a more reform way. And now, because they hate Trump, they want to try it again. They want to do their own thing. So they got it over the finish line, but it narrowly failed in early voting, like 50.3 to 49.7. Okay. In day of voting. It was yes, barely on early voting. It was no 54 to 45 on people who went to the polls on Tuesday. They lost by 9 points. It got 73% of mail-in ballots. Okay, including they took no votes off the board in 23 of the 130 counties in America. In Virginia, they subtracted no votes, and in Fairfax, they had a mail-in dump of 35,000 votes that all went for yes. So they're, not only do they have a court problem, a constitutionality problem. There's what I think 4 constitutional challenges to how this is all done, but they're about to have a vote stealing problem too.
Well, I'll let the courts handle anything that they're challenging.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing about it is like it doesn't matter. You just got to string it out until it's too late to change the ballots, right?
Right. I mean, the thing is that we're in April. I mean,
yeah.
If you push this around a little bit, you will reach this point where you can't put this into effect because you've got to go through, you've got to get everything ready, and you can't, that it's not like you can wait till October 15th. You have got to do this a lot earlier. So
if you can make this last through the summer, you probably are not going to face it.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's sports metaphor is run out the clock a little bit on this, right? So yeah, I mean, this is so they have this, there's a lot of these independent commissions that exist across the nation, and and you have Eric Holder, who's got this supposedly voting commission, and he thinks it's perfectly fair. The thing that gets me about the Democrats, so Republicans pass it, and I didn't like it to begin with in Texas, but they pass it, and Democrats, they look at this as like, oh, well, that's disenfranchisement. Democrats pass something almost exactly the same, and it's completely fair, right? It's like, but the whole thing is, it is. I mean, the Democrats have disenfranchised the Virginia voters, who, as much as Republicans might have disenfranchised Democratic voters. I mean, it's like you can't say it's one thing in one area and nothing, it's something else in another area when you're basically playing the same game. It still goes back to my wish, and the Louisiana case may get us closer to that point, which is just like, you should use something like artificial intelligence, and you just take your state map and you run a contiguous, compact, colorblind, run through, and you create your districts, and then you can have humans go through there and fix errors and things like that, because we know AI isn't perfect, but AI probably gives you a fairly quick way of figuring it out. You have to kind of look at that. But if they get rid of the set aside, then you can say, okay, the chips are going to fall where they may. It's like, you live over here, this is your district, and this is how it works. And as population shifts over 10 years, you redo that, and then you see what happens. I mean, I have no idea how that would turn out, whether or not that would be more Republican or more Democrat. I suspect it would be more Republican overall than Democrat, because especially if you lose the set asides, which is just something that is not needed anymore. You could argue that it was needed. There was a point in time where you kind of had to balance some things out, but this is a society, we don't need that. And so we are now, we're now going through this affirmative action for congressmen, right? It's like, here's your seat, only black, basically this is set aside. So black or Hispanic or whatever only can win this seat, and the chances are it's going to be a Democrat. So that's not what we want.
Right. Yeah. And we definitely don't need it anymore.
And I think it would also create less shifting of districts, in the sense of like, how many times have either you or I, been in the same, I've lived in the same home for 22 years now, and I really don't know from election to election sometimes, when they do this thing, it's like, so what district am I in now? Right, because the Democrats get in there and they start tweaking and tinkering it. And I think I've been in 3 or 4 districts in 22 years, and I haven't moved, but they keep shifting the map so they can bring up the favorability and try to increase their numbers. So it's like, I don't know that I don't think the demographics have shifted so much that you have to do it, but that is pure gerrymandering to make sure the Democrats win and run the table in Maryland, and as well as elsewhere.
Yeah.
So,
and I don't know, Yeah, they might be displeased with how their little project ends up too. I'm
Right,
not
right, right. No,
convinced.
I mean, I think, look, I mean, I think this one, this is becoming a little bit of a free for all, but I think no one is guaranteed just because it looks on paper that you may gain seats. The voters may have a completely different opinion.
That's right.
So
Now, like for instance, so 11 now, with under this new map, if it ever takes effect, you know, I would be in the same district as Front Royal, you know, out on the Shenandoah. So I don't know that, that Republicans can't win that district, right? You start stretching out, so that's a lot of rural area there, and then that when you get to Front Royal, that's not a liberal place either. So it could be that the thing they created, they may not like what it leads to.
Yep. All right. So we will wait and see how this goes. The court looks like there's going to be a few things in there, and maybe like we said, maybe it'll just take long enough that it will wind up kind of being a moot point for this election. So we've got a few other things real quickly here. We have Sheila Cherfilus-McCormick has resigned, just short of being expelled.
Right.
After being looks like she got her hands cut in a cookie jar. What was it, $5 million of COVID funds to fund her lifestyle and some other things, and things like stuff that she denies. But there was a lot of fraud with COVID funds. So
right, and her own party is like,
they don't want anything to do with her.
It's interesting what's going on now. It's like I think one more has to go is Corey Mills, right? Whose wife beat her and stole a bunch of money himself and all that stuff. But like quietly, bipartisan basis, the House is kicking out the really bad people, right?
Yeah,
and low level. They're not talking about it much, but they're working together, and it's both parties, and they're saying, and it's basically you lose one, we lose one.
Yeah, I know.
The majority is up to 6 now because they keep getting kicked out and also dying. Donald Scott died again yesterday.
Yeah,
we lost time for him.
Yeah, so it's been kind of an interesting term in Congress here, and if you get elected to Congress, I don't know that you get the respect you used to because all these things keep happening. You got a few bad seeds in there doing stuff, messing around here, and then I think it brings the whole, it just puts a bad name on the institution itself.
Yeah, and the thing is like, when you read, when a congressman says anything, and it can be the most anodyne statement ever, America's great, we're sorry the soldiers got killed, whatever, right? Just things that everyone should agree with. And, the comments that will come in, you're just a thieving jerk, right? You're a traitor, you hate America, and it's like, I haven't even voted on anything yet, so it's like our perception of those people is that they are there to be kicked and dragged and not listened to or respected.
All right. Next topic up is quick as we got around the bend here is Tucker Carlson. There was a video of him apologizing for helping get Trump elected. I don't know. I mean, how many people care? I mean, I'm probably not doing myself any favors by actually talking about this, but it's like
somebody said
what has happened to Tucker?
Right. That's right. And it's like, I can't believe that it's about money, right? Because I mean, he's been rich his whole life and he's still rich and that ain't going to change. And that's fine by me. But I don't think that he's doing this to get money, but I think that he expected to be a lot more closer to the inner circle of Trump world for this term than he ended up being. I think it kind of became clear that they were like, we like that you like us, but you're not part of the policy making team. And I think that kind of made him resentful, and I think that has something to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm beginning to wonder whether or not there's a group of these people that thought, we would have access and we'd be able to have some influence into the administration, and they found that they didn't. So instead, they turn around and they bash the administration, and they do these things and like, sorry, didn't really care about you that much. It's like I thought, during the years that Tucker was on Fox, I mean, he did some funny things and he was good at a lot of things. but post Fox, there's something about some of these people post Fox that it makes me, scratch my head. But they have freedom of speech. They can go say what they want to, and they can go make their money. Tucker had money before he came into the business, and he has more money. He continues to. I think he's still minting money with. People still like him, but I don't. I think there are people in the MAGA base that are like, we're done.
Yeah, and I know that like we've discussed on here about all the people who are cord cutters and all this, and we don't watch TV like we used to. But all these people that were on TV that go off of TV and then they have their little podcast or whatever, like they have to scream a lot louder to get heard, right? Now that they're not on TV, they get more and more, like Megyn Kelly's in the same box, right? They get more and more extreme because what used to draw an audience, that audience is not really there anymore. I mean, TV is still TV, and whatever podcast, yeah, a lot of people watch podcasts or listen to podcasts, right? But they don't, you don't have they're not listening to the same podcast. Some of them are listening to us. Some of them are listening to, so there's no network showing us that would funnel, 200,000 viewers onto this show. And there's no network funneling 200,000 viewers to Tucker or Megyn Kelly or, whoever else, people just sitting in front of the TV watching whatever's on. You don't get any of that audience because those people do not sit there and program their TV to watch podcasts, right? They're just flipping to find something entertaining. So you lose all of that. And I think that's kind of underestimated in the role it's played in these people who have lost their TV jobs. Chuck Todd, he seeks so desperately to be relevant. He's saying increasingly crazy leftist things because he's just not noticed anymore. Acosta, he's gotten a lot crazier, right? They're all over the place. When they lose that TV voice, they're scrambling for other stuff.
Right. When you lose your platform, on cable or network news, it's really hard to maintain anything after that. I mean, some people can do it. I mean, you have to be immensely popular, and the Acosta, we always knew he was kind of just off, and Chuck Todd, he had his moments and stuff like that, but it's not like he had this super loyal following that we're all going to say,
he was a striver too. Yeah.
We're going to go follow you wherever you go because you're the reason we watched NBC or MSNBC or whatever. So yeah. Okay. All right. Last couple of things and we'll be done, and we're almost out of time anyway. The tariff, the government opened the tariff refund portal. I don't know how much money I think they're saying that maybe $127 billion or whatever could be refunded, but it's a process like anything else with the government. You got to apply. You have to be the direct importer, I think, of the goods and have paid them directly. So this is going to be a process. How that trickles back down to the consumer, that I find to be very questionable whether or not that's actually going to happen. So I don't know. I don't know how this is going to work. There will be people who will be applying. So I put up here just because I'm kind of curious to see how this plays out, to see whether or not, the government actually approves much in the way of refunds. They've identified what the possibility, what the potential is, but I don't know if it'll just be a wind up being a fraction of that.
Yeah, I think they should make it as hard as they could. Of course, I think the court ruling was terribly flawed. So, maybe they get another crack at straightening it out.
Okay. And then last, before we leave, the Democrats in California, post Eric Swalwell, held a debate for governor. So actually, I didn't realize. So I saw that the former state controller, she dropped out. So there's one less now out there, but there were I think there were six of them debating last night or whatever, and the other night, and it didn't go well. I mean, no one came out, as the front runner, right? I mean, you have Katie Porter in there, and people are bashing Tom Steyer for his wealth and stuff like that. So the Democrats are still struggling here, and so they continue to do that. 1-2 Republican could be. We're just kind of watching it. We're
starting to scramble.
Yeah.
If they're going to do it, if they're going to get one of those places on the ballot, more people got to drop out. They got to coalesce around, and you say they got to coalesce around who, right?
That's
Porter,
right.
you know, who's like really unlikable. Tom Steyer, who's not part of any of their lives, right? It's like it's really tough. They're in a tough. Javier Becerra, who was, a terrible member of Biden's cabinet and a crook. They don't really have a lot of good options. It's the same thing as I don't know if you saw the polling. Harris and Newsom are within a point of each other for Democrat presidential nominee in 2028. So I'm like, I honestly don't care which one you end up with on that one.
Yeah. So the thing with the California thing is just that the ones that are the people that are left for the most part, at least, especially if you look at these six, they all think they ought to be the one that people ought to coalesce around. So right now, at this point in time, none of them are willing to bargain and say, I'll drop out if you promise me this, or what am I going to get in return for throwing my support to you to vault you to the top? So this could be kind of a death match within the Democratic Party in California, and then they lose the governorship. They'll lose the whole thing because they can't agree with each other to say you're the guy or you're the woman or whatever to do this. So that's right now they're all acting like they are the only option, and until they start, like you said, coalescing and agreeing, they need to narrow this number down so they can actually get into the top two.
Yeah.
So anyway, this would be fascinating to see a Republican governor in California. It's just been a long time. So good. So we'll just I guess we'll cross our fingers. Whatever.
Yeah, it's a mismanagement on steroids. So you have a chance.
Yeah, right. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Hope you enjoyed it. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America. We will be off for about 3 weeks, I think it was, I said. So I'll post again with a reminder as to when we're returning. But so enjoy the time off. I will be enjoying my time off in the far reaches of Asia.
Yeah. Good thing no news is scheduled to happen during this period.
Yeah, there'll be no news at all. It's like, I'll be halfway across the world and trying to keep up with anything. So anyway, thanks a lot, everyone. We'll see you again in a few weeks.